Why the music so quiet? Did you get the right one? Okay, hey Ghost Boy of the future. Hopefully this offline thing works. I discovered that since unplugging my mic and plugging it back in, it did automatically went to maximum gain, so my voice sounded absolutely absurd on stream. Also, that my Wi-Fi will not let me stream, despite being fairly good Wi-Fi. Guess I need Ethernet. Not sure how I'm gonna run Ethernet up here, but fuck it, we ball. Alright, let's, oh my god, it feels so weird to stream offline. Alright, well, the first thing I wanted to take a look at is a little bit of fish in the news. I don't know if I'm going to do a full fish in the news episode on one thing or on a couple things, but some articles have been popping up recently about the sturddlefish. I don't know if you guys know what the sturddlefish is, but essentially, by what seems to be pure accident, why is my camera where it is? You know, this is a classic of the Zachary stream. What's going on here, man? Seemingly by complete accident, a sturddlefish is a hybrid between a paddlefish and a sturgeon, the American paddlefish and the Russian sturgeon. They don't particularly look alike. Show pictures of each. That's a sturgeon. That's a paddlefish. Somehow they make a hybrid. They're not in the same family whatsoever. And scientists were completely surprised when this happened. So I think I read something about the experiment. It's been popping up in the news recently again. It goes through like news cycles where they talk a lot about it and then they don't talk about it for a while. And the current news cycle was talking about how ridiculous these hybrids were and the fact that they were created in general. But what I think is extremely funny about it is they were bred in captivity completely by accident. So they were intended to be a control. So they were trying to do gynogenesis, which is a form of parthenogenesis. Basically, they were trying to see if sturgeon or paddlefish could reproduce on their own, make genetically identical clones, essentially, of themselves, because that could be a good way to help reintroduce the populations, since both of these fish are critically endangered, like very low population numbers under huge threats. So they were trying to see if they could come up with a way to have these species reproduce more consistently. And asexual reproduction, although not necessarily ideal in evolution because you don't get much genetic diversity, is a good way to get a lot of fish fast with not a lot of effort. So that was the idea. And as part of this experiment, they needed to control. Because whenever you do a scientific experiment, you tend to want a control group so that you can tell the difference between what is happening based on the science that you're doing and what would happen naturally. So they took the eggs of the sturgeon and the sperm of the paddlefish. It might be the other way around. Yeah, paddlefish fathers instead of sperm from sturgeon. So it's sturgeon eggs and paddlefish sperm, and they introduced those to each other as the control, essentially saying, well, this won't do anything because these fish are in different families, so this can be our control group, and we'll know, since nothing will happen to these eggs, that these eggs were in fact unfertilized, and that if other eggs do hatch, it means that they were truly created through parthenogenesis and they weren't created through, you know, some sort of sperm holding mechanism. Because say sturgeon had the ability to hold on to sperm for a really long time and attach it to eggs, and we didn't know that, then some of these control eggs would have hatched into baby sturgeon, and that's how we would have told. And that's why the importance of a control group. What they didn't expect is that their control group actually created hundreds of viable offspring. About 100 survived for a year. 2/3 survived over a month, and over 100 survived for a year. So a paddlefish plus sturgeon hybrid, which looks like, I think it's these two. I think this is a sturgeon, this is a paddlefish, and in between looks like this, somehow survived for almost a year. This is absurd to me. Parent sturgeon, sure. Why do the hybrids look so much more like sturgeon than they do like paddlefish? And I want to see more diversity. Did every one of these look different? Like, did every baby have like a slightly different variation? Were there some that looked more like paddlefish? This is so weird to me because I know typically my experience in hybrids and freshwater fish is that they tend to be an intergrade. Like, they tend to have the median for all of the various, I don't know, the various traits. So like if one has a certain amount of scales or fin rays and the other one has a different amount, they tend to be the in-between amount. But for some reason, these look more like sturgeon than they do like paddlefish. Honestly, they just look like sturgeon with extended noses. How the genetics work for that, I have absolutely no idea. I mean, it is really cool, but really crazy that you take something that looks this different. I mean, this is absolutely nothing like these. And it extends the, like, what is actually different? It extends the upper lip, or maybe that's the entire mouth. I think it's just the upper lip, or just the snout in general, because the mouth is underneath. So somehow the genes that apply to creating this, like, paddle on the paddlefish somehow influence the sturgeon. The scales are also reduced. The scutes on the side are also reduced, as well as the ones on the top. I guess that's sort of an intergrade. But see, like, the dorsal fin is equally sickle as it is in sturgeon. The caudal fin looks much more like sturgeon caudal fin than it does like paddlefish caudal fin. The coloration, I guess it's a bit darker than the average sturgeon, and this one's missing most of the white on the bottom. I mean, it gets there towards the belly, but overall has that coloration. It just seems like they took like 95% of the genes from the sturgeon and like 5% from the paddlefish, which I thought was very interesting. The fact that it was created as a hybrid is extremely funny to me. I don't know if there's precedent for mixing fish of different families. I'm trying to think of which fish it is, but I think it's been done in labs before. But something fish these unique being mixed together is crazy. The hybrid fish may have potential uses to reduce the carbon footprint and cost of feeding farm fish. However, due to likely being sterilized hybrids, most likely not an option. Could have on ecosystems. It would be crazy if these things got in the wild and were surviving. Catching one of these things is just ridiculous. Fish are known to hybridize in the wild, but something like this would most likely never happen in the wild due to, hopefully, different spawning habits, different ranges, different methods of spawning, different methods of attracting mates. Hopefully this would never happen in the wild, but fish hybrids do happen all the time. And up until recently, I thought fish hybrids were like the only common hybrid that existed, but it turns out that birds hybridize a good amount too, which means that probably everything hybridizes, because fish and birds are kind of like the biggest things that we pay attention to. I don't know, do mammals hybridize very often? Not sure about that one. But fish and birds are the main ones we pay attention to, so it's very interesting that if they're the ones that hybridize the most, probably means that everything is hybridizing. Like little bugs in your backyard, there's probably in-between bugs of, similar related things, and all sorts of interesting things. I wanted to look at one article. I don't know what the recent article I saw was. Let's see, can I sort by? Wow, I don't have to be scared about exposing something, huh? Oh, was it this? Is this what my friend sent me that led to this?
This is an American paddlefish, and this is a Russian sturgeon. These are what I'm going to talk about though. Those are sturddlefish. As the name implies, they are hybrid offspring of the previously mentioned paddlefish and the Russian sturgeon. The one that looks more sturgeon-like received more sturgeon chromosomes, while the one that looks more like a paddlefish is closer to an even 50-50 split.
That's a 50-50 split? That looks exactly like a sturgeon. It just looks like a weird, like I would just assume that was a mutated sturgeon.
They wouldn't normally exist, but a team of researchers accidentally created them in 2019 when trying to see if they could breed either of these two endangered fish in captivity. They attempted to trigger a form of asexual reproduction, and in order to do that, they needed sperm from another type of fish. Because the two fish are from entirely separate families and last shared a common ancestor around 184 million years ago.
I didn't know that. 184 million years ago, they last shared a common ancestor in the Jurassic period, and they're still able to have babies. Obviously not infertile babies, but babies.
The sperm wasn't supposed to work. It was supposed to act more like a blank, allowing the offspring to only inherit DNA from the mother. But it clearly didn't go as planned, and they ended up creating an army of Frankenstein fish.
Oh, wait, I'm understanding the whole accident thing better. It wasn't just like a normal control. You use sometimes in parthenogenesis, there's a type of parthenogenesis. I think this might be what they're talking about, gynogenesis, where the babies are clones. It is asexual reproduction. The mother is just making a copy of herself. but it has to be triggered by sperm. I think there are some fish like mollies. It's some sort of live bearer that does this, where like they'll mate with a male, but they don't actually use the sperm from the male. They just get triggered to have babies by having sex with the male. It doesn't make a lot of sense, because then why would the sperm need to exist in the first place? But it is a real thing that happens, and I have read about that. So they were actually using the sturgeon sperm to try and induce that in the paddlefish, and using the paddlefish sperm to try and induce that in the sturgeon, and I guess found out that hybrids could be created. That's interesting. So it was less of an accident than I thought, but still kind of an accident.
The offspring did seem fit enough to survive, as after a year there were still around 100 surviving sturddlefish.
Okay, either someone wrote the Wikipedia article based on this video, or he is just reading the Wikipedia article.
Interestingly enough, all of the offspring ended up feeding more like the sturgeons, a more carnivorous diet, straying from the typical paddlefish diet, which is more like a filter feeder.
I didn't even think of that. Paddlefish filter feed in big rivers. Sturgeon are more like on the bottom eating up crustaceans and shit. So they ended up eating. So did they have the ability to digest both? Oh my god, it's interesting. I assume they tried both. That's got to be so crazy, derailing your entire scientific experiment. You're a scientist just trying to like induce gynogenesis, learn about reproduction and all that, and all of a sudden you've got 100 baby hybrids between two families that no one's ever seen before. And you have to decide, like, do I pivot the entire topic of my paper? Do I pawn this off to someone else and continue with my project?
The remaining sturddlefish today live in labs, and there are no plans right now to create any more in the future.
Aw, why not? Just kidding, it's probably a good idea to not create more in the future. Alright.